Okay, the wait is, it is finally over.
Finally.
The silence that has been hanging over the paddock like a, thick fog, it's been broken. We have spent months speculating, arguing, staring at grainy spy shots, trying to figure out what is going on at Silverstone.
Well, yeah.
But now, the father of modern aerodynamics, the man who arguably sees air differently than any human on the planet, has officially spoken. Adrian Newey has unveiled the philosophy behind the Aston Martin AMR26.
And this is arguably the most anticipated technical reveal of the entire 2026 season. And frankly, the stakes just could not be higher.
No.
This isn't just another car launch. This is the start of a totally new era for Aston Martin. It's the moment the check comes due on that massive investment.
Exactly. We are talking about Newey's first real baby in green. But here's the big question we're tackling in this deep dive, and we are going to be ruthless with the details today. Is this machine a stroke of genius, a masterclass in what he calls fluidity? Or, when you look at the timeline, and we have some absolutely shocking numbers on that later, is this actually a desperate race against the clock?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? Because when you really analyze what Newey said, underneath all the technical brilliance, there is an admission that this project is living on the razor's edge.
All right, just a quick note before we floor it. This segment is part of our news coverage of recent F1 events. Now let's unpack the beast, the AMR26.
Let's do it.
Newey sat down for this interview, and the first thing that really jumped out at me was his refusal to point at some kind of magic bullet.
Right.
The interviewer basically asked him, "What's the secret? What's your favorite part?" And he gave this very frustrating but very classic Newey answer.
He did. He basically said, "I don't have a favorite child." He completely rejected the idea that one specific wing or one clever little duct is the secret sauce.
He didn't want to talk components.
No, he wanted to talk about a system.
Which feels like a bit of a humble brag, doesn't it?
Right.
Like, oh, the whole thing is so perfect, I just can't choose.
It sounds like that, but it's actually a very specific engineering philosophy that defines his entire career. He used this term, fluid fields.
Fluid fields.
And he described the design as a holistic package. Now, for you listening, we really need to break down what holistic means in aerodynamics because it's not just a corporate buzzword here.
Yeah, let's get technical for a second. Usually when we look at a car, we break it down. We look at the front wing, then the floor, then the rear wing. He's saying that's the wrong way to look at the AMR26.
Exactly. In Newey's brain, the Air doesn't see the car as a collection of separate Lego bricks. He talked about how the front suspension wakes up the Air.
Wakes up. I like that phrasing.
Think about it. The angle of those front wishbones, it prepares the airflow structure before it even touches the side pods. Then that flow is manipulated all the way down the body to the rear suspension.
So if you design a brilliant front wing, but it sends, dirty air to the diffuser,
the whole car is slow.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good the individual parts are.
So it's like a relay race. If the first runner drops the baton, the anchor leg can't win.
He described it as a conversation. It's about the conversation between the parts.
Yeah.
If the front of the car isn't talking to the back of the car correctly, you lose downforce. And in 2026, efficiency is absolutely king. You cannot afford a car that is arguing with itself.
I love that image, the parts talking to each other. But he did drop a word that got everyone excited and maybe a little nervous.
Yeah.
He called the interpretation of the regulations aggressive.
Well, let's be precise. He said we, the media, the fans, would call it aggressive.
Right.
He said, I never try to be aggressive. I just follow what I think is the right direction. But then he admitted that this car does things that have never been done before.
Never been done before. Now, that is exactly what you want to hear from your star designer. You don't pay Adrian Newey $30 million a year to copy Red Bull. You pay him to break the mold. And the biggest visual cue of that aggression, it's the back of the car. We need to talk about the compressed rear end.
This is where the engineering gets fascinating and probably incredibly frustrating for the mechanics who actually have to build the thing.
Oh, for sure.
Newey confirmed that the rear of the AMR26 is significantly more compressed than any Aston Martin in history.
Okay, translate compressed for us. I'm picturing a crushed soda can, which probably isn't right. What does that actually mean for performance?
Think of the Coke bottle shape that F1 cars have.
Yeah.
You want the car to be wide at the front and then taper in very, very tightly at the waist, right in front of the rear wheels.
Okay.
The tighter you can make that waist, the more compressed the bodywork is around the engine, the more room you have for clean air to flow over the floor and hit that diffuser.
And the diffuser is what generates the suction that sticks the car to the track. So tighter waist equals more suction equals faster corners.
Precisely. But here's the massive problem. You have a V6 turbo hybrid engine in there. You've got radiators, hydraulics, miles of cabling.
All generating heat and taking up space.
A ton of space. And Newey has essentially told the mechanical engineers, I am giving you a shoebox, and you need to fit a suitcase inside it.
That sounds like a complete nightmare for the guys with the wrenches. I mean, if you pack it that tight, doesn't it overheat? Don't you risk blowing up the engine?
That is the risk. It's reliability versus aerodynamics. Newey actually chuckled about it. He said the mechanical engineers embraced the philosophy, but he admitted it was the opposite of easy for them.
I bet.
They're sacrificing their workspace and potentially cooling for aerodynamic gain. It's a very, very aggressive trade-off.
So we have a car that is physically tighter, visually aggressive, and conceptualized by the greatest mind in the sport. If I stop the deep dive right here, you'd assume Aston Martin's going to walk away with the championship.
It would, but you absolutely shouldn't.
Because there's a catch.
A massive catch. This is where the interview shifted from, technical excitement to a very sobering reality. If you look at the timeline Newey revealed, you realize Aston Martin has been fighting with one hand tied behind their back.
This is the bombshell for me, the handicap. I think people really underestimate just how much time matters in F1.
Time is the one resource you can't buy. Lawrence Stroll has billions, but he can't buy the month of January.
So let's look at the dates. The 2026 regulations allowed teams to start wind tunnel testing on January 1st. That was the starting gun.
Right. So on January 1st, you can bet that Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, they all had a scale model of their 2026 car in the tunnel. The fans were on, they were gathering data, they were learning.
And Aston Martin?
Mid-April.
Mid-April? That's 3.5, almost 4 months.
In Formula One, 4 months is an eternity. It is effectively half a season of development time gone.
Wow.
While Max Verstappen's team was refining their front wing and fixing problems in February, Aston Martin hadn't even put a car in the wind yet.
But why? I thought they were building this super team. I thought the whole point of the new factory was to be ready for this.
It was a perfect storm of delays. First, Newey himself didn't even join the team until March.
Oh.
But more critically, their brand new wind tunnel, the Core Wave facility, it wasn't fully adjusted and calibrated until April.
So they had the new toy, but they couldn't trust the numbers it was giving them yet.
Exactly. A wind tunnel isn't a toaster. You don't just plug it in. It requires months and months of calibration to ensure the airflow is perfectly consistent. If your tunnel is lying to you, you build a bad car. So they had to wait. They had to sit on their hands while the competition was sprinting.
This puts the whole compressed design in a new light. The whole project was compressed.
Absolutely. They weren't just refining, they were sprinting just to get a car ready for the shakedown. Newey admitted they started from the back.
So they had to make a choice.
A very difficult strategic choice. Do you rush to maximize performance for that first race in Melbourne? Or do you accept you'll be slow initially and build a solid baseline you can upgrade later?
And which way did they go?
The latter. Newey was very clear. They avoided over-optimizing the launch car. They built a platform. They sacrificed pure speed in March for the ability to develop the car in June, July, and August.
Which brings us to the battlefield itself. The 2026 regulations. We've heard so much about the engines, but Newey made a point that this is a unique storm.
It's a total reset.
It's not just a chassis change,
Yeah.
and it's not just an engine change.
No, it's both simultaneously.
Yeah.
Historically, F1 tries to change one or the other to, keep things stable. 2026 changes both. A brand new chassis formula and a brand new power unit formula. It's arguably the biggest engineering challenge in the sport's history.
And to fight that war, Aston Martin built a very specific weapon. We mentioned the Core Wave wind tunnel. Newey was. He was raving about this thing. He didn't just say it was good.
He said it was impeccable.
Impeccable.
And probably the best wind tunnel in the world of F1. That is a bold claim from a guy who has seen every top-tier facility for the last 30 years.
So what makes it so special? Is it just a bigger fan, or is there more to it?
It's the imaging technology. Most tunnels just measure forces, downforce, drag. But this tunnel uses a specific particle imaging system.
How does that work?
They basically seed the air with these tiny particles. Then they use lasers to illuminate those particles as they flow over the car.
No?
It allows the engineers to literally visualize the flow fields in real time. They aren't just looking at numbers on a screen. They can see the vortices, the turbulence, the separation.
Lasers and particles. It sounds like science fiction.
It effectively is. It lets them see those fluid structures Newey talks about with incredible precision. And because it was custom built for them, it integrates perfectly with their computer simulations. It's a game changer for correlation.
Meaning, what the computer says, the tunnel confirms, and the track confirms.
That's the holy trinity. But a wind tunnel is useless without a good engine, and they have Honda. But Newey kept bringing up another partner, and I found this surprising. He put a huge emphasis on ARAMCO.
Right.
This is a critical point for everyone to understand about 2026. The new regulations are what we call an efficiency formula.
What does that mean in practice? Are we just hypermiling?
In a way, yes. The amount of fuel you can use is strictly limited, and the electrical power is increased. This means fuel and oil are no longer just consumables you pour into the car.
They're performance parts.
They are performance differentiators. Newey said that without a partner like ARAMCO developing 100% sustainable fuels, the engine development would be completely restricted.
So the fuel itself actually unlocks the horsepower.
Precisely. It's chemistry. If the fuel isn't chemically tuned to the specific combustion chamber Honda is designing, you lose efficiency. You get knock or incomplete burns. You lose power. Same for Valvoline and the lubricants. Friction is the enemy.
So it's a triangle.
Newey sees it exactly like that. Honda builds the hardware. ARAMCO builds the boom. Valvoline stops the heat. It's a single, complicated equation. If one side of that triangle is weak, the car is slow.
He also touched on the broader future of energy. He didn't really sound like a guy who thinks EVs are the only answer.
No, not at all. He's very pragmatic. He sees a mix of hydrogen, synthetic fuels, biodegradable fuels. He believes 2026 is a huge step for carbon neutrality because it proves you can have high-performance motorsport using sustainable liquid fuels.
The combustion engine isn't dead.
It's just evolving.
Speaking of evolving, let's talk about the buzzword of the century, AI. I loved this part of the material because there's so much nonsense out there about AI just designing cars now.
Yeah, everyone thinks engineers are just typing into a computer, "Hey, chat, design me a fast car that beats Max Verstappen."
And Newey shut that down immediately.
He did, and I love that he calls it chat, like they're buddies. I don't ask chat to design a wing.
But they are using it. So where is the line?
He clarified they use machine learning, which is a branch of AI, for very specific tasks. They aren't using generative AI, the stuff that writes poems or draws pictures.
Why not?
In his words, the physics of F1 is too sophisticated for that.
So what is the machine learning actually doing?
Pattern recognition. They feed it massive amounts of simulation data to find optimal setups. They use it for game theory and race strategy, simulating millions of scenarios to decide when to pit. It just processes data faster than a human ever could.
But the creative spark.
The idea to compress the rear end or shape the suspension, that still comes from the human brain.
That's actually really comforting. I don't want a robot designing my F1 car just yet.
Exactly. The fluidity he talks about is a human concept. A machine doesn't understand flow the way Newey does.
But Newey also gave us a warning about what we're going to see on track.
Yeah.
He said the car at the Barcelona shakedown, it's basically a ghost.
A phantom, yeah.
Yeah.
He was very explicit. The car you see in the spy shots, ignore it. The car in Melbourne for the season opener will be very different.
And by the end of the year?
Unrecognizable.
Which goes back to that 4-month delay, doesn't it? Because they started late, they couldn't finish the real car in time for the launch.
Correct. They built a platform that can grow. They focused on development potential. They didn't want to paint themselves into a corner with a design that was fast out of the box but couldn't be improved. They left room to learn.
And part of that learning is fixing the sins of the past. He mentioned the drivability issues of the 2022 to 2025 cars.
That was a rare moment of critique for his new team. He admitted the previous generation of Aston Martins were difficult to drive. They were peaky.
Meaning they were fast, but only in a very narrow window.
Right. Maybe fast in a straight line, but unstable in the corners, or unpredictable over bumps. For 2026, the goal is a car that Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso can actually trust.
Confidence equals lap time.
Always. If a driver is scared the rear end is going to snap, they lift off the throttle 10 meters early. If they trust the car, they keep it pinned. Newey wants a benign, predictable car because that allows the driver to extract that final tenth.
So let's zoom out. We've got the AMR26, the CoreWave laser tunnel, the Honda engine, the Newey brain. But we have a 4-month delay. What does this all mean for the championship?
It means Aston Martin is playing a very high-stakes game of catch-up. Newey is confident in the trajectory. He believes they are heading in the right direction. But Formula One is a relative sport.
It doesn't matter how fast you are. It matters how fast you are compared to Ferrari.
Exactly. If Aston Martin improved by 1 second a lap, that sounds amazing. But if Ferrari improved by 1.2 seconds because they had an extra 4 months in the wind tunnel, then Aston Martin is actually going backwards.
It feels like they are banking everything on having a steep learning curve.
They are. They are betting that their tools, the tunnel, the simulation, the AI, are superior enough to outdevelop the competition during the season. They might start slow in Melbourne, maybe P4 or P5, but the goal is to be a rocket ship by mid-season.
It is the classic hare and the tortoise, except the tortoise has a V6 turbo hybrid and Adrian Newey drawing the shell.
And the hare has a 4-month head start and maybe Lewis Hamilton driving it.
So what is the verdict? Is this a masterpiece or a rush job?
The verdict is tension. The ingredients for a masterpiece are all there. The fluid philosophy, the aggressive packaging, the Honda power. But time is the one variable that can ruin even the best recipe.
It's a gamble. Lawrence Stroll has gone all in.
He has. And it's going to be fascinating to watch the stopwatch in Melbourne. That will be the only truth that matters.
Absolutely. So here is my final thought for you listening. Adrian Newey says he's playing the long game with a car built for evolution. But in F1, as we've said, time is the one luxury you don't have. Will the aggressive AMR26 catch the pack by Melbourne, or has that 4-month delay already cost them the championship before the lights even go out?
That is the question that will define the 2026 season.
If you want to stay ahead of the grid, you know what to do. Follow DRS Zone right now on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't just watch the race, understand the war behind it. We'll see you in the next deep dive.